The party was in full swing, the laughter and chatter of the crowd echoing through the grand hall. My wife, Rachel, looked stunning as always, her red dress catching the light with every graceful movement. I sipped my drink, watching her from across the room as she mingled effortlessly with our friends and acquaintances. For years, I had admired her charisma and charm, but tonight, I saw her differently. Something in her demeanor felt off. It started innocuously, a stray glance here, a fleeting touch there. It wasn't until I noticed her lingering laugh with a man I didn't recognize, a man far too comfortable with her, that my suspicions began to solidify. My stomach churned as I watched them disappear into the quieter side of the house, whispering and laughing like teenagers sneaking away from prying eyes. I followed, staying far enough back to remain unnoticed. My heart pounded as I heard muffled voices in the study. Peering through the barely cracked door, I saw them. Their intimacy was undeniable. Her hand on his chest is on her waist, the kind of closeness that left no room for misunderstanding. I stepped back, my mind racing. Fury threatened to consume me, but instead of storming in, I decided on a different approach. Rachel had been deceitful, and I wanted her to experience the depth of betrayal she had inflicted on me. Returning to the party, I gathered myself. A plan began to form in my mind, one that would expose her duplicity without any dramatics that could be dismissed as jealousy. Over the years, I had helped organize countless events, and my knack for subtlety had been honed to perfection. Tonight, it would be my greatest performance. First, I casually engaged our friends in conversations, dropping seemingly innocent remarks about Rachel and her new friend. I played dumb, suggesting he might be an old colleague or a family acquaintance. By the time I was done, everyone was curious. Gossip spread faster than wildfire, and soon, whispers about Rachel's mystery companion filled the room. Next, I discreetly slipped my phone to a trusted friend, someone I knew wouldn't hesitate to record evidence when the time came. I guided them to the study, where Rachel and her companion remained oblivious. Within minutes, my friend returned with a video, Rachel's betrayal immortalized in high definition. The final act of my plan required finesse. I made a toast, calling Rachel to my side. She looked radiant, her smile wide as if nothing in the world could disrupt her perfect evening. I spoke of trust, loyalty, and the bonds of marriage, my words dripping with irony. The room fell silent as I reached the crescendo of my speech, pulling out my phone and playing the damning video for all to see. Rachel's face paled as the room erupted into gasps and murmurs. Her companion tried to slink away, but the crowd's eyes pinned him in place. I turned to her, my voice calm but icy. "I thought you deserved to know how much I appreciate your honesty," I said, leaving her speechless. The night ended with Rachel scrambling to explain herself, but I had already made up my mind. I walked out, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions. My revenge was perfect, public, precise, and irreversible. For the first time in years, I felt free, knowing that I had reclaimed my dignity on my terms, that in the days that followed, the fallout from the party rippled through our social circle. Friends called, some expressing shock, others awkwardly avoiding the subject altogether. Rachel tried reaching out numerous times, her texts and voicemails swinging between anger, desperation, and apologies. I ignored every one of them. Instead, I focused on the next phase of my plan. Ending the marriage wasn't enough. I wanted to sever every tie while ensuring she felt the weight of her actions. I met with a lawyer and presented the evidence. The video, combined with other bits of proof I'd collected over the past few months, painted an irrefutable picture of infidelity. In our state, that meant I had leverage, both legally and financially. Rachel, on the other hand, wasn't prepared for how swiftly I moved. By the time she received the divorce papers, I had already frozen our joint accounts and arranged to buy out her share of the house. The property we had once called home was now mine alone, and I changed the locks the very day she moved her belongings out. But I didn't stop there. Rachel had built her reputation on being the perfect wife and socialite. She thrived on the admiration of others, the image of an ideal life that she carefully curated on social media. I decided it was time for her followers to see the truth. Using an anonymous account, I shared snippets of the video from the party, ensuring it was just enough to imply what had happened without revealing everything. The caption read, "Asterisk, the truth always finds its way to the surface." Asterisk, within hours, it spread like wildfire. People speculated, dissected, and ultimately turned their backs on her. The same social media platforms she once used to flaunt her perfect life became the source of her humiliation. I was careful not to overstep legally, but the damage was done. Her reputation was in tatters, and the man she had cheated with, he disappeared as quickly as he had arrived, wanting nothing to do with the chaos. Meanwhile, I began rebuilding my own life. I reconnected with old friends, picked up hobbies I had neglected, and even started dating again. It felt liberating to no longer be weighed down by Rachel's deceit. Months later, I heard through the grapevine that Rachel had moved to a different city, trying to start fresh where no one knew her name. Part of me felt a pang of pity. After all, I had once loved her, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of justice. She had made her choices, and I had simply ensured she faced the consequences. As for me, I thrived. The experience taught me the value of self-respect and the power of quiet, calculated action. My revenge wasn't just about exposing Rachel's betrayal. It was about reclaiming my life and showing that no one, no matter how charming, could walk all over me without repercussions. Life after Rachel was a strange mix of quiet solitude and newfound clarity. At first, the house felt too big and empty, a reminder of what had been. But over time, I began to appreciate the silence. It wasn't loneliness, it was peace. I redecorated the house, erasing traces of her influence. Her favorite curtains? Gone. The pretentious abstract art she adored? Replaced with photographs of landscapes I'd taken during road trips. It wasn't just about changing the space. It was about reclaiming it as my own. The community gossip eventually died down, as scandals always do. But there were some lasting changes. People who once treated me as Rachel's husband now saw me in a different light. Many expressed admiration for how I'd handled the situation, though I never indulged in the details. Let them wonder. My silence added to the mystique, and for the first time, I felt like I had stepped out of her shadow. Then there was the matter of dating again. I'll admit, it wasn't easy at first. Trust was a fragile thing, and the idea of opening myself up to someone new felt daunting. But I refused to let Rachel's betrayal define my future. I started small, casual conversations, coffee dates, nothing too serious. Slowly, I began to remember what it felt like to connect with someone without the weight of distrust looming over me. One evening, at a charity event a mutual friend had roped me into, I met someone. Her name was Claire, and she was nothing like Rachel. Where Rachel had been polished and strategic, Claire was down-to-earth and genuine. We struck up a conversation about the bland hors d'oeuvres, and before I knew it, hours had passed. She had a quick wit and an infectious laugh, and for the first time in a long while, I felt the spark of something real. We took things slow, but Claire proved to be everything I didn't know I needed. She didn't shy away when I told her about my past. Instead, she listened, offered her perspective, and assured me that not everyone would betray trust so carelessly. With her, I felt safe, something I hadn't realized I'd been missing for years. Rachel tried to re-enter my life once. It was unexpected, a year after everything had unfolded. She sent a long, rambling email apologizing for her actions and asking for another chance. She claimed to have changed, to have realized the error of her ways. I read it twice, not out of consideration, but to remind myself how far I'd come. Then, without replying, I deleted it. She was my past, and that's where she belonged. By the time Claire and I moved in together, I hardly thought of Rachel anymore. She was just a chapter in my life, a painful one, but one that had taught me invaluable lessons. I had found happiness again, not just with Claire, but within myself. My revenge may have been perfect, but my true victory was a life I built afterward. One where Rachel's betrayal was nothing more than a distant memory. Life with Claire became the fresh start I didn't know I needed. She brought lightness to my days, a stark contrast to the storm that Rachel had left behind. We traveled together, exploring places I had only dreamed of visiting. From hiking trails in the mountains to quiet afternoons by the sea, every moment with Claire felt like a reminder that life could be simple and beautiful when built on trust. One evening, as we sat on the patio watching the sunset, Claire asked about the night everything unraveled with Rachel. I hesitated at first, unsure if I wanted to revisit those memories. But Claire wasn't prying out of curiosity. She genuinely wanted to understand. It wasn't just about her cheating, I admitted, staring into the horizon. It was the years of pretending everything was fine, the lies, the facade. Exposing her wasn't just revenge, it was closure. I needed her to face the consequences. But more than that, I needed to move on. Claire reached over and took my hand. "And you did," she said softly. "You moved on and rebuilt everything. That's what matters." Her words struck a chord. She was right. What had started as a calculated act of revenge had ultimately been a step toward reclaiming my life. Rachel's betrayal no longer haunted me. It had shaped me, sure, but it no longer defined me. Months turned into years, and Claire and I grew closer. Eventually, I proposed on a quiet beach during one of our trips. It wasn't a grand, flashy affair, just the two of us, with the sound of the waves as my backdrop. She said yes, tears in her eyes, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt whole. The wedding was a small, intimate gathering of close friends and family. As I stood at the altar, watching Claire walk toward me, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had led me to this moment. The pain, the betrayal, the calculated revenge. It all felt like another lifetime. This was my new beginning, one built on love and honesty. Rachel didn't cross my mind often, but when she did, it was with a sense of indifference. I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that she had remarried, though her reputation still bore the scars of her past. I didn't wish her ill. In fact, I hoped she had learned from her mistakes. But I no longer cared enough to dwell on it. Claire and I built a life together filled with laughter, trust, and mutual respect. And in those quiet moments, when I reflected on how far I'd come, I realized that my true revenge wasn't the humiliation I had orchestrated that night at the party. It was a life well lived, free from deceit and full of love. Rachel's betrayal had been the end of one chapter, but it was also the beginning of a much better story. My story,